Hi guys, it's Soul, and I'm sorry about all the stupid static, but I have to record with Hypercam because I can't get Audacity to work. This is going to be a tutorial about how to draw trees, and it's actually kind of requested from a friend of mine, Danger Dragon, who requested I did backgrounds, but I've tried fitting it all into one video and it hasn't worked very well. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to draw, like, two types of trees. I'm trying to think here. I'm very tired, I can't think. Deciduous trees and I guess pine trees. I don't evergreen conifers. So we're gonna start off with the deciduous tree, and first this is gonna be like kind of a sandwich. And what we're going to do is, depending on where the tree is and what type of tree it is and all that kind of stuff, it'll be different. But it'll be kind of like making a sandwich. You kind of need to have a plan of what you're gonna do first, just so that you can kind of know what you're doing. This is going to be fall foliage, because I'm not going to give you a chance to show that again. Okay, so this is that base coat. I'm using the wet acrylic tin, and it's at full opacity, whatever. You can make multiple layers for this. I generally don't. I don't see it as necessary. This is the trunk, and generally the trunk will taper downwards, and there won't be any kind of reverse taper going on. This kind of looks like something a kindergartner would draw, but bear with it, because, you know, this is going to be kind of like a sandwich. I don't know if I've already said that. I'm so confused and tired. And you might have a rock amongst the roots for the roots to kind of go over it. You know, just adding little bits and things like that really helps embellish the tree and make it more interesting than just a stereotypical tree. This is, you know, making roots more interesting because, I can't think, because older trees generally have exposed roots, and also they'll have a lot of branch ramification. And ramification is just twigging and such. And I'm using all these terms because part of the reason I know how to draw these trees is because I kind of do bonsai in my free time, and it's helpful to know these little things. This is creating branch ramification. This is important. If it's an older tree, there's going to be a lot of this ramification going around. I'm sorry if I'm not making a whole lot of sense here, and I'm sorry if the static is driving you crazy. I cannot record with Audacity because apparently... Oh, I just can't record with Audacity because it will not sync properly, and it makes me very mad. So just creating more of this ramification. And also, you know, you can make more than one trunk. You can make the trunk split. You can make the trunk do all kinds of crazy stuff. It's your tree. Generally, it helps to kind of understand what kind of tree you're doing, because it's just helpful that way. If you know the species of tree, you can get a reference, and then you can copy that reference, or don't copy it, you know, too heavily, but it just helps to have a reference for things, especially for specific species. Obviously, a pine tree is going to look different than an elm tree, and an elm tree is going to look different from a willow tree. And there's going to be different, it's going to be a different amount of spread on the tree. It's going to spread out at different rates. To do ramification, actually, I forgot to tell you this earlier, so I wasn't thinking. You make of course, you have it at full opacity. You take the brush to being relatively small, and you start building more twigging. And this just adds interest to the tree. It isn't just some blunt thing of branches. I'll do more tutorials on other background elements, but I kind of have to make one devoted to trees, because trees are a little more complicated than doing rocks and clouds and grass, which really don't take very long to demonstrate. I might have already said this, but the older the tree, the more ramification you will have. That's just something that's also just kind of helpful to know. If you're drawing a young tree, you probably wouldn't have this much ramification in the branches. And you wouldn't have that kind of root spread either. In fact, especially on really young trees, you wouldn't have any root spread at all. You would just have like a stick out in the ground. Something else that's helpful is that whenever you make a bend, that's where you can make another twig, like. That's a bend, that's another twig, that's a bend, that's a bend, that's a bend. Well, obviously, within reason, that looks pretty ridiculous. Alright, that's pretty good for our purposes. So we're going to go in there now with a slightly lighter tone than the base tone that we had for the foliage. And go in there with something maybe a little more towards the yellow and a little brighter. What you're going to do is just fill in areas. Don't cover up the trunk completely, because then you just lost the point of doing all that work. You can show individual leaves too, depending on how big your tree is. This is a very rough tree, by the way. I'd probably spend more time on this if I was doing, an actual painting. But since this is going on YouTube and it's going to be sort of slowish, it's going to be kind of fast going, because I normally spend more than 10 minutes on a tree. Because when you think about it, 10 minutes isn't a very long time to do a picture or any kind of demonstration. It's going on YouTube though, so you can't really complain. Yes, this is incredibly rough. It is incredibly rough, but it's good for our purposes, so that's fine. We're going to highlight again, and we're going to use yellow, because I usually use yellow to highlight. I'm going to highlight the leaves. Depending on where your light source is coming from, we'll say the light source is coming from here. You'll highlight accordingly. Alright, now that's pretty close to what we want. Later on you'd probably go in there with more colors and try to blend everything together a little bit more, but we're not going to do that, because this is about making trees, not about blending colors, and because I have no idea how much time I actually have left to do this. So what we're going to look at now is the trunk really fast before it's time to go. We're going to, because this is brown, I tend to move towards the yellow side of the spectrum to highlight. That is just because it just tends to look a lot nicer. And this is sort of a youngish old tree. I don't know how to, do that. So we're going to make somewhat furrowed bark. When I say that, that's the kind of bark you see with little crags and stuff in it. We're going to do that. There's bark on the roots too. On the exposed roots there's bark, so keep that in mind too. We're going to take black. Now, a lot of people don't like using black for painting. I do. I don't know why people have such a problem with it, but I guess I can understand it. This is not a full-on bark tutorial, because I don't have enough time to do that. But we will go in there again and just sort of try to even it out a little bit more, because that looks pretty harsh. We don't want something to contrast too much. I like to use contrast in my pictures, but I don't like to contrast too much to where it hurts people's eyes. Something else that's nice is when you're going in and highlighting, I'm going to start highlighting with a yellowish kind of thing now. This is the final highlight. Not dark enough. That's not the right shade. Yes, it's just tweaking. What you'll want to do sometimes is just go in there, add little knot holes and other little features to make the tree appear more aged, or make the tree appear more believable, and it just gives it more character in general. Alright, that's basically how to do a tree. Of course, you would probably go in with the foliage and do a little bit more low lighting and shadows. In fact, I highly recommend you do. In fact, I'm going to do that now because it's bothering me so much. But it's really not as hard as a lot of things will tell you. Drawing trees is probably more complicated than drawing a rock, but it's not as hard as a lot of things in terms of landscape features. Like water is probably the hardest because, well, it's just a little more dynamic, and it's hard to make it look believable, and I don't know if I'll do a tutorial on water or not. And I probably just made it look worse, but that's generally how you do it. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. I might do something else